Thursday morning menu soulful, music, news, and commentary that makes your soul full. And I'm actually so very, very honored to have two amazing guests in the West Studios to bring us another episode of Health and Soulful Being. And that's right, I have Sharon and Steve Willett. Did I say it correctly?
You did.
Oh my gosh, I said it correctly. I took a little French, 20 years ago. And I've always had a thing about French. It's one of those languages where you learn it, then you forget, and then you learn it again, and then you forget, and you just go through that cycle of that. But I love French. So anyway, I'm glad to have the two in here from the Living Yoga Center, and we're going to discuss all about yoga and getting you in the mood for. And Sharon came up with the perfect word for the new year.
Oh, thank you.
Instead of New Year's resolutions, New Year's
intentions.
Intentions, that's right. So what do you intend for the 2015 year? The year of the wood sheep. Last year it was the year of the wood horse. So now we're into the year of the wood sheep. I don't know exactly what that means, but I guess I will find out eventually. Of course, the wood horse meant, fast-paced moving, and 2014 did seem like one of those years that just kind of flew past us. So,
It did.
So maybe it'll slow down. Maybe the year of the wood sheep will bring a little slow and a better flow in
Nice.
2015. So that's what I'm rooting for this year. So my head has stopped spinning. Anyway, why don't we just get things started off and give a little background about yourselves and your works that led you up to getting into yoga.
Getting into yoga, wow. Actually, Steve came to yoga before I did,
Oh, okay.
so he should start.
Oh, well, there you go, Steve. Why don't we start with you?
Well, thank you. I began practicing yoga at a gym in the early 90s.
Okay.
And as I was practicing yoga, I would find that some things would resolve themselves without me even thinking about it during the practice. And I had an aha moment where I had a revelation in a resting pose, Shavasana, and remembered my grandfather. And then when I checked my voicemail, my grandfather had died at that same time. So I said,
Wow, the synchronicity.
this practice can bring me to connections
Yes.
beyond what I think are available. And I said, let me come to practice again tomorrow and see what I find.
At the time, what were you mostly engaged in? What was your primary work?
My primary work, I was in the wholesale wine, liquor, and beer business.
Oh, wow.
Sharon's father invited me to join the business in 1980, so Sharon and I moved to Champaign from Houston, Texas
Okay.
in 1980.
You moved all the way from that great
We're-
warm weather.
It may be warm there today,
Right.
you are correct.
Yes,
Yes. So I was in a business for 23 years where there was a brotherhood, there was a handshake rather than a contract, and there was something yogic about being connected to everyone within the business because we looked out for one another. So that's how I moved to Champaign. That's how I spent 23 years of my life. So I've been in business and moved millions of dollars of product in and out of warehouses and all of that. Yes, and after that 23 years, I took about a year and didn't wear a suit any longer. And
How was that?
That was that. Well, suit was so familiar for 23 years, 5 days a week.
Yes.
It was difficult to let go of it, actually. And actually what I did was spend a year modeling at the University of Illinois. So that meant I went from suit to nothing on. So I learned a
From
lot.
one extreme to the
You
other.
got it.
Exactly.
I learned a lot about myself and my own body image because depending on who was drawing me, there could be 30 different me's on a piece of paper,
Right.
and none of them may have been anything that I thought I was. So that plus the yoga, where I explored what was available to me and what could become available to me, really led me into the yoga practice. And then I found that there was more than the physical practice, the practice of asana, And Sharon at the same time was still working with a trainer in a gym and pushing weights around, and I found that my body weight was enough to push around and just the right amount of resistance. So soon Sharon found yoga along with me.
I noticed the changes
Okay.
in Steve. He started becoming calmer and more open, and just the light that you see in somebody who practices yoga was amazing. I'm like, wow, I've been married to this man for a long time, and I see these changes.
Yeah.
And this is yoga. This is what had happened.
What's it bringing?
Right. And so we were actually on a business trip. We were out in California, and Steve said, I'm going to find a yoga studio. He was so enthralled with yoga. I have to find a place to practice. And I said, okay, I'll come with you. And we went to this beautiful yoga studio that overlooked mountains. And I knew nothing about yoga other than watching him. And I experienced an out-of-body experience.
Oh, wow.
And when the class was over, I was just sitting there going, wow, there is something to yoga. And so from that day forward, I practiced as well.
And so you were into the physical training. So how was that different than the yoga experience? Or did you find yourself having similar kind of experiences as far as flexibility and strength? Or did you find something way different in yoga than you did
Yoga is actually called an 8-limbed practice. There's 8 limbs to yoga. And the physical part, the asana posture practice, is only one of those 8 limbs. So that's the difference between like regular fitness, where it's all about the physical.
Right, there's a mindfulness in the practice of yoga,
Right.
and there's a connectivity, and there's an opportunity to really be authentic and to find what is authentic for you. And that's what we celebrate. That's what we at the Living Yoga Center do, is welcome everyone. And I know most everyone by first name, not last name, or if there's something like doctor that comes before their front name, I often don't know that either. But we are people with first names who've come together to find our authenticity, to breathe, because all we have to do, my yogic philosophy is all we need to do is breathe in and breathe out,
Yes.
and be aware of how we're breathing and how the person we're speaking to is breathing, and how my breath and my interaction with you is changing, affecting,
Right.
enhancing perhaps who we are.
Yes, I have a lot of times several people who will tell me, to watch my energy, because sometimes I can be like just way over and I'll have people just like up and bubbly and just going, or I can be really down and I get those people down. So like you said, when you start developing these inner practices, it does make you a little bit more mindful of, the energy that I'm bringing to others, which Jill Bolte Taylor would say from her book, My Stroke of Insight. That was one of the things that she learned, was not just the energy that people were bringing to her, but the energy that she was bringing to others.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Right, when you're in a studio and you're having a yoga practice, it's different every single time because of the energy, the exchange of energy in the room. And although each person is in their individual yoga practice, there's still that energetic happening in the room.
Right, exactly. And when you guys are in these practices, and you do you ever see like the energy? Sometimes people see energy fields, and they'll see when you're in the midst of the practices. Have you ever witnessed that?
I personally don't see energy, but I feel energy.
Okay.
So I can feel it in the room.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
What
the
about-
energy is available there to see.
Yes.
Sometimes actually, yes, either there's a bright light, or sometimes you can just see over someone's shoulder the monkey that's hanging right there on them, and it's like, can we help that person just brush that off, or be aware of the monkey on their shoulder?
Yes,
to see
absolutely.
what each of us are still carrying with us.
Oh, absolutely. I having been a person like that when I was younger, and I always like to tell this story when I was younger, that I used to be around with my mom, and I'd be like, Mom, look at the pretty colors around that person. They, my parents be like,
Oh,
shut
wow.
up, you're crazy. And then once I got to about 19, and I was like, why do I, have these sensations, and why do I see this stuff? And then that's when I started learning about the energy and auras. And so, I noticed but in meditation, I don't. But so, a lot of times people will talk about the transcendental, experience that they have in meditation, and now they see the bubbles light them up, and I'm like, okay, yeah.
Was that okay for you?
Yes.
One of the things about yoga is that we learn to be non-judgmental and accepting, and particularly accepting of ourselves and where we are in this present moment.
Yes.
And so we often have people call or stop by the studio and say, well, I can't do yoga. I can't do yoga. I'm not flexible. I have a bad back, whatever the case may be. And that's not true, because everyone can practice yoga. You practice where you are in this present moment.
Yes.
And when you learn to be grateful and to accept yourself in that present moment, that's what yoga is all about.
I think that's what our biggest problems are, is the acceptance of ourselves. Not so much others, but ourselves is such hard work. You mentioned that there were 8 limbs to the yogic practice. What are the 8 limbs?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's asana, there's meditation, there's the study of the yamas and the niyamas, which are like the ethical practices.
Right, there's the withdrawal of senses so that we have less information coming in.
Okay.
And there's also bliss, so that along this whole path, and there's pranayama, breath control.
Yeah.
So there's not
That's
only the nice, soft breath that we're moving through right now together, measuring in, measuring out, but there's a number of breaths that will either heat us or cool us or brighten the very membrane that surrounds our brain. There's a breath that brightens the skull, and yes, so those are the different limbs, and some divide those out, but I see in a practice that many of those can be melded together.
I was thinking that they seem like they could be interconnected.
Yes.
And I won't say one cannot exist without the other, but what a greater experience when you do bring those 8
Sure,
together.
when you try to explore all the aspects of yoga. Many people come to yoga for asana, for the physical practice.
Right.
And that's fabulous if that's what they need from yoga, and any of the other things elude them. But one of the visions that Steve and I have at the Living Yoga Center is to offer all the limbs of yoga, so that we put it out there.
Yeah.
So there are special events that we offer. We have special monthly classes that have nothing to do with the physical practice of yoga, but talk about the other limbs.
And what are some of those non-physical special events or monthly events that you guys offer?
Sure. On Fridays, once a month, we offer satsang, which is the study of yoga.
Okay.
It's a donation-based class. Another thing that we have at the studios, we have a number of classes that are donation-based, so the teacher puts a basket out, and you can put in the basket what works for you. That makes it more accessible to more people.
Yeah.
We also offer once a month a kirtan, which is call and response chanting. Oftentimes it's done with a harmonium, which is a yogic, or I don't know if it's Indian or not, musical instrument.
Okay.
Actually, the kirtans currently are being led by Jennifer Allen, and I know that Jennifer's been to your show
Jennifer's
before.
been on my show.
Yes, right. And then now we're just going to be starting this year doing a community song circle once a month that one of our friends and yoga teachers, Lindsay Scott, is going to offer, which will be similar to kirtan, although instead of being in Sanskrit, which is the ancient language of yoga, there'll be vocalization and English.
Oh.
And before this song
Well, finally you understand what the words mean.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, if you understand English.
Right, exactly. For the English-speaking people.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then before the song circles, this is a new thing that we're going to try to do community potluck dinners.
Okay.
So people can come and bring a dish and break bread together, share some community, and then sing.
Commune, yes, because that's what it's about. I feel like I've been on a boycott technology phase the last month because I'm like, you know what? I want to just touch base with real live people. And if they're only going to contact me through Facebook or text messaging, well, you might hear from me once a week. Because I feel like we're losing that like you said, that community, that commune, that communion that we used to have, and we're suffering because of that, because now we don't really know how people are really feeling, and we don't know how to adapt to how people are really feeling. And I think that's why a lot of times so much chaos occurs, because we kind of lost that instinct of, okay, let me pull back because I can see that this person is being uncomfortable, instead of, I'm texting and I don't know and I don't care whether the person is uncomfortable or not. So I like that.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And that's one of the things that, again, Steve and I, when we decided we were going to do the Living Yoga Center, we decided we wanted to make it as technology free as possible. So when you come into our studio, you don't see a computer. There's no desk with a computer. We do everything. I mean, we have an iPad that we use to process credit cards, but we try to keep it as technology free and people friendly as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of unplugging.
Exactly.
And plugging into something else.
Because we are so plugged in
Yes.
constantly with our devices and our computers and the cars and work. So when you come into the studio, which we refer to as our sanctuary, you come into the sanctuary and you can leave all of that outside. Leave all of that outside the door, because you know what? After your yoga practice, it's still going to be out there.
Yes.
So you can be without it for an hour or 2 hours, and it's still there waiting for you.
So when did you guys decide to actually just morph into a business of yoga?
Well, I had been teaching yoga beginning in, I believe, 2002, and the Living Yoga Center then was owned by Deb Lister. Deb has moved from town a couple of years ago.
I've heard of her through Shelley Mazer.
Yes. And she was looking for a continuance of the Living Yoga Center, because it has been around, oh my gosh, for a very long time,
Probably 20 years.
20 years now.
Right.
And so we looked at it. We looked at a number of models. We looked at a teacher cooperative. We looked at a model where everything was donation based, but that was hard to make a spreadsheet and show to any kind of business advisor, or with a business mind, you go, the amount of money that's going to come in is, I don't know. That doesn't fit too well. Right. So we landed with the word stewardship. So we're now the stewards of the Living Yoga Center, have been for the last 3 years. And our responsibility is to hold and maintain space, create a sanctuary that is safe for everyone, and for that space to be timeless. So we've tried to bring yoga into the business and keep business as much out of the yoga as much as possible. So it's been a unique situation for Sharon and I, because we both had separate business careers, and we were able to support one another. Sharon would come home, you can't believe what just happened at the office today. And since I wasn't personally involved, then I could be that empathetic ear. But now when we come back, and you can't believe what happened at the yoga studio today, then it is a whole different thing.
It's a little challenging.
It's a little challenging, yes, sometimes, yes.
It's part of the challenge for us.
But all we have to do is remember to remain authentic.
Yes.
And for us to
and breathe.
And breathe.
And breathe, absolutely.
And breathe and breathe and breathe, and know what energy you're sending out. And I guess there's a modern term, integrity.
Yes.
But integrity simply means that you're being truthful, that you're being true, that you're being authentic.
Exactly.
Right.
And you guys just moved from like Urbana to Champaign.
We did. I was just going to say that. Right? I mean, that was our challenge, one of our big challenges.
So what made
you
guys decide to move to the Midtown, and that's trying to come up and?
Right. Well, it actually was not our choice. The building that we were occupying on Main Street in Urbana is owned by the people who occupied the floors above us, and their business had grown so quickly, they needed more space. And when it was time to renew our lease, we went into a lease renewal meeting thinking we were going to sign a long-term lease, and we were told, no, the business wants the floor.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
So
you have 50 days to find a new place.
So begins the real journey.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we were every day looking at real estate, looking at properties all over Champaign-Urbana, trying to find the best fit. And oddly enough, I was looking on Craigslist, and this listing came up. It was, in the real estate listings, and this listing came up for this building on First Street. And I saw the front of the building. It was a picture of it, and it said Union Hall. Now, in Sanskrit, the language of yoga, yoga means union.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I got goosebumps.
I'm about to say, I'm getting goosebumps.
I got
thinking about
goosebumps on
it.
my arm, and I called Steve, and I'm like, I think we need to go look at this building. There's something that's telling me we need to go look at this building. And the man had purchased the building 48 hours before, and then put it on Craigslist that, to lease it out.
Oh, wow.
So we went over and looked at it.
We looked at it on a Friday about 2 o'clock. We said, can we come back before 6 and look at it again? And White's Lancaster owns the building, and he said yes. And by the time it was time to eat a little dinner, he said, wait, you see a vision for this? Because the building had not been remodeled since 1940. And everything needed to be looked at, and we had a vision for it. And then the next week we were moving on and getting ready to move to Midtown, which is a great place to move to.
Yes, and sounds like some synchronicity was going on here.
Yeah.
I don't know, divine
Yeah.
intervention
Right.
there.
Now,
That's how it felt.
right
That's
now,
how it felt.
the space is exactly half the amount of square footage that we had before, and previously, and as we were looking to find a place of that same amount or greater, because we have an intention to build a whole healing center that also includes residential. Well, so that may be in a few years.
Yeah.
So we scaled down. We've learned how to use space very wisely, and how.
Feng shui.
That too.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So Midtown's a great place to be. We're just directly in front of the Boneyard. The city's welcomed us. They said one of the city representatives, "Have you ever thought about practicing yoga outdoors?" And so we have permission to do anything, to offer anything in the Boneyard, other than set up permanent residence out there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, how great.
Yeah.
So even though you're dealing with a smaller space, it still seems like the vision is expanded.
Yes.
So and your vision is to have a full holistic center. So what would all that entail? Sky's the limit.
Sky's the
Sky's the
limit.
limit. I mean, for people to offer what they offer, all, like you say, all the different modalities.
Yes.
I mean, massage and acupuncture and aromatherapy and even physical therapy and talk therapy. I mean, there are so many things that people need that can help them.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is a really big goal,
Oh
really
my
big
gosh.
dream. I mean,
And
we
I can
do
see
yoga.
You guys working with others, like one of the monthly events that I saw that you worked with acupuncturist Jim Lur.
Yes.
And we've had him in the studio a couple times talking about acupuncture.
Jim is great. I mean,
He's
and it's
amazing.
really funny, when we were still in Urbana, what Steve and I were doing is that we would have our yoga practice, and then we would go over to Urbana Acupuncture and have acupuncture. And one day when we left, Steve goes, "This is just the greatest combination, yoga and then acupuncture.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk to Jim and see if he wants to do a workshop." And so we talked to Jim, and he goes, "Oh, that's a great idea."
Yes.
Would introduce people to acupuncture who aren't familiar with
Right.
it. It would introduce people to yoga. And we started doing it, and it's become so popular. People love it. We love it. Jim loves it. So we do it once a month.
I thought that was just such an innovative idea. I never would have thought to put the two together.
Well, it's a great idea. So we have a 2-hour workshop once a month on Sundays, and for an hour I teach a slow, methodic yoga practice based on Hatha, where we explore some of the meridians and prepare the muscle and bones and the joints for the acupuncture. And then we have props, and we have blankets and bolsters and bricks and sandbags that you can place 7 pounds of weight on your hand, and you rest in our sanctuary after all working together for an hour, and Jim applies the pins and people move into bliss.
Yeah, because you
then,
fall out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and then I'm waiting outside in the reception area with a pot of tea, and sometimes Sharon makes an apple pie, so there's a little something to share after the 2-hour experience.
That is such a great idea. What other special events or monthly ongoings that you guys offer are doing currently?
Let's see. Well, I told you about
Or
all
have
the
upcoming.
right. I told you about all the Friday things.
Yes.
Asana and acupuncture will be the 18th, I think. I don't have the date exactly right. We are doing on February 1st a workshop called Introduction to Gyrokinesis.
Okay, now what is gyrokinesis?
Well, that's a good question. It's relatively new to me and apparently new to the area. Shannon Stewart, who is a student at the U of I in dance, a graduate student, is doing it. And it's done in a chair. It's movement, kind of like chair yoga, a combination of chair yoga and dance. And it really focuses on the spine.
Okay.
Spinal health is something that we always talk about in yoga. And
Top of the list.
It's the number one thing that people should consider is health for their spine, because everything else in your body comes from your spine.
Absolutely.
It's true, it's true. Now there's a couple other things I might mention. So we have a program called Yoga Gives, and it was one of the first things I started even when Deb owned the studio. I said, you know, we gotta have a class that is gotta have a class that's donation based and that money goes somewhere else. So Yoga Gives is every Sunday at 4 o'clock. Different teachers come in and volunteer to teach it. It's open to everyone. It's open to all the teachers of yoga in Champaign-Urbana, and the money goes to 4 different charities annually that we divide the money out to them. And that is our Yoga Gives program. So giving back was the very first thing that we needed to do. The first class
We're
that was
all
on
about
practice.
giving back here at WAFT.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes.
Exactly.
And then one of our teachers, one of our good friends, Maggie Taylor, offers a group and gives. So she and some musical friends come in once a month on Sunday,
Yeah.
and offer live music.
Yes, I see third Sunday of each month
Yes,
is Reuben
exactly.
Yoga.
Right.
And February 1st will be the intro to gyrokinesis.
Right.
And then the monthly Sundays is the sauna and acupuncture.
Yes,
Let's see
yes.
what else we get. You know, when you were writing me, you said you had developed a partnership with the Don Moore Boys and Girls Club to offer
Yes.
free yoga to their teens.
Yeah.
No
it's
kidding.
So how is that?
It is really,
Fabulous
it's
fun.
really
Right.
fun. It's certainly one of the things you do when
See,
you
when
teach.
first of all, I'm upset and very jealous because when I was a kid and going to the Don Moore's Boys and Girls Club, they didn't have that.
Well, Miss Lynette, who's the director for youth services, I believe is her title, had come to the studio for meditation, which is another thing that we offer. Is twice a week we have meditation, which
Okay.
is donation based. That's on Mondays and Wednesdays at 4:30, led by our good friend Mary Walters.
Okay.
Anyway, so Lynette had come to the studio for meditation, and she reached out for us, and she said, you know, I think this would be great for the teens at the Boys and Girls Club. Steve and I talked to her, and we agreed. So once a month on Friday evening when they have a teen night, we go to the Boys and Girls Club, bring our yoga mats, and, you know, we're trying to influence those young people, see what they think about it.
Do you see any changes? I mean, from like the beginning of when they first come in and then afterwards when
You know, we've only been there twice so
Sure.
far. And my favorite story is that the last time that we were there was a young man who was standing back. He wasn't, we had our yoga mats in a circle and everybody was on the mats, and he wasn't sitting in the circle. He was standing, leaning against one of the basketball machines or something behind us for a good 45 minutes. We're only there for an hour. And the whole time I could see him out of the corner of my eye, just leaning against that machine and watching us. And all of a sudden, he picked up his arm and he came over into the circle and he sat down between Steve and I on the yoga mat and started practicing yoga.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, wow. Okay, so he checked it out and
Yes.
decided this was safe and maybe this is something that I should try. And that's what it's all about. I mean, even if in that 15 minutes made a difference in that young man's life,
Yes.
that's everything.
That's priceless.
Right, and what we're doing with the Boys and Girls Club is part of our mobile yoga program, which is that we take yoga to businesses, corporations, schools, and offer it there. So there are businesses that I go to a couple times a week on their lunch hour, and they spend, some of the employees come in and spend an hour practicing yoga and go back to the desk blissed out.
Oh wow! Do you feel like that we're moving as a society into that evolution of where we're bringing in some of these alternative, ancient practices into the business field instead of it just being all about the grind and work all the time?
I think we're taking some small steps. We're
Right.
taking some small steps. Yes.
You know,
Now, unlike we're not yet with France with the 2-3 hours of a lunch break.
Yes,
And-
exactly.
Exactly.
You go to
No, no.
Italy, you get
Yeah.
a 6-week vacation.
Exactly.
But
Yes.
there are businesses that are starting to recognize that if the employees are calm and relaxed, they're going to be more productive.
Yes. I remember watching a segment with Oprah and Ariana Huffington, and they were talking about how they started putting those practices in their business field. So like Ariana Huffington has like a silent room or whatever that people can kind of go into and even take a nap for like 15 or 20 minutes. And Oprah was saying that they do the TM, the Transcendental Meditation, in her support group as far as her studios and everything. So I really like this concept because I think as far as, especially us as Americans, I think we're just so overpowered at this point, overwhelmed, that
Right.
I
We
like.
believe we need to be driven. That we
Yes.
just have to drive hard every day.
And then you feel like you're not ambitious or you're not a go-getter or something like that if you take a pause and step back and all this stress and worry of we're not ambitious enough.
Right, and that pause that you speak of, we're attempting to help everyone understand that pause can be brought into every aspect of our life, that we can
Yes.
slow down just that little bit so that we again recognize. And there are times when I'll turn to Sharon and say, I'm going to act this way, and I realize that I'm
Yes.
going to do this, and I might even apologize in advance, but here it goes. The message needs to come through loud
Right.
and clear. I'll go back to my mindful breath in a moment,
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that one of the good things that I like about yoga, it does kind of have you pause and in the midst of the activity and be mindful of your breath and be mindful of your present moment. And I like meditation, but sometimes being an American, I'm like, okay, I'm not sitting here for 20 minutes doing nothing.
Right.
So at least when you're doing yoga, you're like, at least I'm in a position.
And it's that union in
Yes.
yoga of your mind and your body and your spirit.
Yes.
It's all of it
It's all
coming
about
together.
moving into stillness. So it's about the
Exactly.
moving into stillness, not being still, but it's the moving into stillness.
Right.
Which is one of the things that I try to bring. I'm a hospice volunteer, so I go and I've always been offered to sit with men so that their partner, their wife, their spouse can give themselves an hour or two. So as I do that, I try to share some of that present moment, the slowing down, and particularly in this life situation where somebody will no longer be on earth very soon,
Right.
and I'm there with them, and their spouse is worn out from giving so much to that person. So I try to bring a little bit of that yoga into my volunteering too.
That's wonderful. That makes me think about, I recently had breast cancer, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2012. And I remember, them having in the breast cancer Mills Breast Cancer Institute having a meditation center, but also I remember them handing out flyers and saying stuff like yoga or something like that. Do you guys have any plans of maybe getting with some of the hospitals?
Sure. Well, currently Mary Walters teaches a class
Okay.
at the Mills Center
All
right now.
right.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And we are looking to develop a program. Yes, and we try to make things not so specific, but sometimes people need to come to something where they know that the group is safe and that everyone has had that experience
Yes.
of cancer or somebody close to them with cancer.
Yes.
So we're in development with that, and and one of our new classes, which is at 4 o'clock. So we've never had a class at 4 o'clock. Those are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that new class, we're just calling it afternoon yoga, and it is for the next 60 days available at a very low price of a drop-in price, cash of $6. And we're offering that at 4 o'clock so that we might be able to address some of the school teachers as they get off school. And then it seems like at the university it's one of those times when there is a pause for them after the afternoon classes and before the night classes. And many people told us that 5:30 or 7 p.m. was a little too late, and as we know in this time, 5:30 is the middle of the night.
Once you get home, you want to stay home, not go out.
Especially in the cold.
Right, so our intention is in the next season, because we don't look at it as semesters, we look at it as seasons, we may add a 4 o'clock class on Mondays and Wednesdays specific to cancer survivors.
All right. And what about younger kids? I mean, you're working with teens, you're working with adults. What about smaller kids, preteens or...
We don't currently have any classes that are specifically for young kids. I mean, there's so many possibilities exactly at all times. And we are really open to suggestions, and so students, say, oh, we'd really like to do this. Like Steve said, somebody said, or several people have said, we'd really like to have an earlier class in the afternoon. So we're flexible.
Wonderful.
Right. So our business model is to nurture and support people with unique gifts that they might offer and share with our community. That is it. All that we want to do, if it's safe, if it's sound, if it has great integrity and there's strong authenticity in it, then you can find it at the Living Yoga Centers. Now our Tommy Moore is a doula, and she offers a prenatal class at the Living Yoga Center, and it's on hiatus for a while she's in Israel, and at the late end of the month she'll be back, and it is remarkable to see women carrying a baby within them step out of that class, and they are just glowing, and they
talk about some energy. That is some really cool energy.
So we're not currently offering a yoga class for any child out of the womb yet, but we will.
Well, goodness. Oh, so much. And, I'm going to have you guys in here again because half an hour was just not enough for me. So I'm happy to have you guys back. Sharon, Steve, thank you guys for coming in.
If anybody has any questions, we do have a website.
Yes, I was just about to ask you the website, the address for the classes.
We're at 212 South 1st Street in Champaign.
Okay.
There's free parking on the street and around the corner off Clark Street, around the Boneyard. Free parking in Midtown right now. Thank you, City of Champaign. We're at livingyogascenter.net. We're also on Facebook, and people can call us or email us, and we'll answer your questions, and we welcome everyone to the studio.
And what's your phone number if someone wants to contact you?
Sure, it's 217-351-8359.
All right, Sharon and Steve Willett from the Living Yoga Center. You are listening to 90.1 FM WEFT Champaign. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.